Hi, I'm going to show you how to fix a Google Merchant Center suspension. And if you don't know who I am, my name is John from Stub Group. We are a premier Google partner and have helped thousands of businesses fix Google suspensions and comply with Google policies over the last decade plus. And I'm going to take from our experience doing that and share that with you today to explain how to fix Google Merchant Center suspensions. I'm going to walk through 4 different things to audit before you submit an appeal to Google of the suspension. I'm going to talk through some of the most common types of businesses that face suspensions of their merchant centers. I'm going to talk through some of the most common types of suspensions, and then also answer a couple other frequently asked questions and issues that we see going on in the space right now. So buckle in and let's talk about how to fix this. So first of all, there are 4 things to audit to fix your suspension. Number 1 is your Google Merchant Center settings. So you're going to want to go into your Google Merchant Center and look through every single setting in there. You're going to want to pay particular attention to the business information area where you have your physical address and contact methods and business name, things like that, as well as your shipping policies and your return policies. The reason I highlight those areas is because those are the areas where we see the most issues often when we audit merchant centers, and those are some of the most important areas that need to exactly match what you have on your website. So when you audit, what are you looking for? Well, first of all, make sure the information is accurate. Make sure you have the right business name, the right physical address, right shipping policies, etc. Secondly, make sure they match what you have on your website. So for example, often we'll see situations where a business might have a different physical address on their website than they have in their merchant center, or they might have, different shipping costs or different handling time or whatever it may be on their shipping policy page that doesn't match what's in their merchant center. I would say most of the time when we audit things, we see problems, and all of those problems can either cause suspensions or reduce the likelihood of your suspension being reversed because they're issues that exist when Google reviews things. So really, you want to make things picture perfect and again, make things accurate in terms of all of your settings. So that's step number 1, review all the settings in Merchant Center. Step number 2 is also in your Merchant Center, and this is to look at the quality of the product data that you are sending to Google. So you'll have a product feed. This might come directly as an integration from Shopify, for example, if you have the Google and YouTube app installed in your Shopify store, or it could be a manual feed you create through a third party like DataFeed Watch or Feedonomics or something like that. Or you could even manually be adding products directly to Merchant Center. However you get them in there doesn't really matter. What matters is that the information you have in there be accurate. So there's a couple of things to focus on. First of all, you need to make sure that the information in there matches what's on the product pages when people click through. So for example, one common issue might be, let's say you have variants of your products that are in your feed and they have a certain price, color, etc. But then when you click on the product URL in Merchant Center and go to that product page, you don't see that particular variant's price and information. Maybe you see a different price because it defaults to a parent product. Things like that are problems, are against Google's policies and can cause issues. So make sure everything matches up. Now, you can have different title in Merchant Center than on your website. You can optimize titles and descriptions and things like that. So those don't have to exactly match up, but obviously it should be the same product. You can't have a totally different product advertised under this name here, and then you click on the link to get to the website and it's another product. So that's super important. Also, the product identifying information that you send to Google in your feed or that you add manually needs to be accurate. Biggest thing is what they call GTIN. So Global Trade Identification Number is what that stands for. And this could be like the ISBN number for a book. It can be any number that a manufacturer assigns to a particular product. And one common issue we'll see when people hire us to fix their suspensions is that they might be sending incorrect GTINs to Google or made up GTINs. Like we had a situation where we're working with a client and they're like, oh yeah, we just made up a bunch of GTINs and sent that to Google. And no, you can't do that. Once we fixed that, removed that, we were able to get the account reinstated. So it's really important that the quality of the data you're sending to Google is good, accurate, lines up with your website. The third thing to audit is your website itself. So especially in the e-commerce space, which of course is where you're using Google Merchant Centers, Google pays a lot of attention to your website. There are a lot of things they look for automatically through their automated AI checks and robots that are crawling the website. And there are things to look at manually as well when you get a manual review of a suspension. And first of all, there are policy pages you need to have. So for example, shipping policy, return policy, privacy policy, things like that. You need to have those on your website, be extremely clear with what your policies are. And again, like I mentioned earlier in the video, they have to match up with those same sets of information in your merchant center. So your shipping policy on your website needs to match, have the same order handling time, same shipping transit time, same cost structure as what you have entered into your merchant center. So that's hugely important, having the right policy pages on your website. You have to have good contact information on your website so people can reach out to you, and the more the better, because that's a credibility element for Google, and they're really focused on what contact information you have, and does it work? Does it line up with what they expect to see? Things like that. The website needs to work. It needs to be navigational, functional, not have issues, not have pop-ups that are preventing people from adding things to cart for on mobile, for example. We've seen that happen before, stuff like that. It's really important. You need to make sure you're not adding any weird fees during the checkout process. So handling fees, for example, or we saw a client recently who was charging I think a 3% credit card processing fee that they were adding at the time of checkout. That's against Google's policies, so you can't do things like that. I can't go through every single thing you got to look at on your website because there's just so much. We do have a free website audit compliance document that has tons of stuff to look at and make sure you have on your website that you can get for free from our website, stubgroup.com, and definitely recommend using that. And there are some nuance too that comes into play depending upon what type of suspension you have. Like if you have a misrepresentation suspension versus a counterfeit goods suspension, etc. I'll talk a little bit about that when I get to the section of the video where we talk about specific types of suspensions. But at the end of the day, you've got to make your website picture perfect, credible, consistent with itself and with Google Merchant Center in order to increase your likelihood of reinstating your Merchant Center. And the fourth thing to audit is not your Merchant Center, not your website, but your digital footprint. Primarily what I mean by that is reviews, but essentially what comes up when someone Googles you online, because Google will Google you to see what comes up. And if they see that you have lots of negative reviews, for example, that's a massive red flag and often contributes or causes suspensions, because Google wants to be sure that the advertisers that they are sending people to from Google are behaving well, are giving a good experience to customers. And so if they see lots of negative reviews, lots of issues online about your business name, then that's an immediate red flag. Now, what can you do about it? Obviously, not every customer is always going to be happy. Sometimes negative reviews happen and there's only so much you can do to prevent that. So what you can do, beyond the obvious things, which is provide good customer service, good product, etc., is also be sure that you are professionally responding to any reviews you're getting, negative or positive, online. Because this is a good signal to Google to show that you do care about things, that you're on top of things, that you're trying to address concerns and complaints that consumers have, and it will help your case that you are a legitimate business that is trying to treat people well. So go Google your own business, see what comes up, and then take all the action you can to improve what that looks like, to help improve your digital footprint so that when Google looks you up, there are less concerns or issues that may prevent your account from being reinstated. So I'm just going to quickly recap those four things to audit. Google Merchant Center settings, the actual product data you're sending to Google Merchant Center, your website itself, and then your digital footprint, what comes up when someone Googles your business name or your domain. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about what types of businesses are most at risk of having their merchant center suspended. And this can happen to any type of business. We've seen it all. Everything pretty much you can imagine we've dealt with over the last decade in terms of causes for suspensions, types of businesses, etc. The most common business that we see suspended currently in 2026 would be drop shipping businesses. These are businesses who don't stock their own physical product, and instead they will place an order from a third party when someone places an order with them, and they will ship directly from that third party, typically the manufacturer, directly to the customer. Now, this is not against Google policy. Google does not forbid or prohibit drop shipping, but they don't like it. It's the best way to put it. And that's because there are a lot of fly-by-night operators, people who don't know what they're doing in the drop shipping space, people who've been sold a dream by some drop shipping guru and who can't actually fulfill and give a good customer experience, and who create problems with customers who ultimately are Google's customers using Google's tools to get to your website. So we see tons and tons of dropshippers get suspended, and it's a hard road, I would say, for dropshippers to not get suspended, honestly, right now. But in terms of how to fix it, everything that I just said applies. Auditing, merchant center, product data feed, website, reviews, etc. And getting reviews is also important. So actually getting real reviews from customers to create a good digital footprint that's accurate online about your dropshipping business is important as well. So dropshipping, also any new business that just doesn't have much history online and then is creating a Google Merchant Center account and looking to use that is at a higher risk of getting suspended. Again, they're not inherently violating any Google policies, but Google is very paranoid about legitimacy of businesses they allow advertise, and especially through Google Merchant Center. And if they see, hey, your domain hasn't existed for a long time, hey, there's really not reviews about your business, there's not much information online, they're much more likely to suspend you. Not for sure, there are plenty of businesses that don't get suspended, that are new, brand new, but we see a high percentage of businesses that we work with to help fix suspensions who are new and just don't have much history. And also, something that goes hand in hand with that is if it's a new business, often they have not really fleshed out their website fully to have the right policies, the right FAQs, things like that, because they're new, they're just getting started. And so it's even more likely that there are mismatches or missing things or issues on the website that then may cause that suspension to occur. And then the third category of most common businesses we see get suspended, I'd say, are businesses that are advertising in what Google considers to be sensitive or restricted industries. So for example, any products related to healthcare, supplements, things like that. Products that might be accessories to weapons, for example. And there's a lot of other areas where Google just has more restrictive policies. They're more sensitive about those things. And so if you're advertising that space, you're more likely to get flagged because Google has you under a microscope, so to speak, and you're just more likely to run into issues. Could be product level disapprovals, or it could be an account level suspension. So dropshippers, new businesses of any kind, and then businesses who are selling in sensitive verticals are the most common types of businesses we see that get suspended in 2026. Now, what are the most common types of suspension? Well, we've looked at a ton of data, and by far, but 90% of the suspensions that we see of merchant centers are for what Google calls misrepresentation. So if you're watching this video with a suspended account, super likely that you have that issue. If you don't, there's a couple others we'll talk about as well, but misrepresentation is very common. We will have a link in the description to a video we made separately specifically about misrepresentation if you want to dig into that further. But from a high level, misrepresentation is kind of a bucket catch-all suspension type that just says that Google has concerns about you as a business. It could be negative reviews and a bad digital footprint. It could be missing information from your website. It could be bad quality data in your product feed. It could be all sorts of things that Google is saying is a problem. And again, everything I outlined in this video about what to audit and fix applies to fixing misrepresentation suspensions. Another common, kind of after misrepresentation, another common reason for suspension we see at merchant centers would be counterfeit goods. We see this particularly in any kind of luxury sales space. So if you're selling luxury handbags, watches, sneakers, things like that, Google is very sensitive about counterfeit goods because there are a lot of counterfeit goods out there and they're trying to make sure that you're not one of those. And we also have a separate video all about counterfeit goods and selling luxury items through Merchant Center and what to do to try and increase the likelihood of not getting suspended there or fix suspensions, and we'll have a link to that in the description as well. And then another common reason would be what Google calls website needs improvement. And this is basically Google saying that there's either a functionality issue with your website, people can't use it correctly, or maybe there's like so much missing content like lorem ipsum default text on your homepage or things like that, where they're like, hey guys, you aren't ready yet, you need improvement. And this is generally a very fixable type of suspension, easier to fix generally speaking than misrepresentation, although there's nothing really easy with Google. It all takes a lot of work and time and expertise. But what you really want to focus on with website needs improvement is, hey, do we have text everywhere we should have? Do we have the right pages? And look for functionality issues, like pull up your website on mobile. And for example, we've seen issues where a pop-up was getting in the way of preventing someone from getting to checkout. And so they just couldn't really move forward with the process. So check across multiple devices, multiple browsers, look for issues, and clean it all up, make it functional, make it have accurate, comprehensive text, etc. Another type of suspension we've seen become a little more common recently is called sale of service. And we also made a separate video about this, link in the description. Essentially, sale of service is Google saying, we think you're selling a service through Merchant Center rather than a product. So for example, product would be tires for a car. Service would be the labor of putting those tires on a car. And Google just does not allow the sale of services through Google Merchant Center, which is why you won't see ads for accountants or lawyers or things like that in Merchant Center. So sometimes Google is correctly flagging an issue that you can fix. Sometimes they are incorrectly thinking that you are selling a service when you actually are selling a physical good or even a digital good that is allowed. And so I'd say if that's your problem, go watch a sales service video to get more ideas about how to fix that. A couple of other issues and common questions that we see is like, what is the connection between Google Ads account and Google Merchant Center account, and how does it impact suspensions? So if you have a suspended Google Ads account that is connected to your Google Merchant Center account, there is a high likelihood that your Merchant Center will get suspended just because of that connection, especially if your ad account is suspended for something like unacceptable business practices, for example. Google may well then suspend your Merchant Center for misrepresentation. Doesn't always happen. It's not always a one-to-one, but it's common. And then vice versa. If your Merchant Center is suspended, it's not at all uncommon for the ad account that's connected to it to then be suspended. And most often, the reason Google will give for the ad account suspension is what they call terms and conditions. TNC, terms and conditions. You'll see that in the red bar at the top of the suspended ad account. And usually when that's the case, the course of action you need to take is fix the Merchant Center first, get that reinstated, then appeal the ad account suspension. If it's any other type of ad account suspension, like circumventing unacceptable business practices, etc., usually you'll need to focus on the ad account suspension first, get that fixed, and then work on the Merchant Center suspension. And there's nuance to all of that. Obviously, if you're not sure what to do, you can reach out to Stub Group for help with that. We deal with this all the time, but that's kind of the rule of thumb in most cases for which to start on first. Another thing that is a thing these days is verification. So sometimes Google will require or ask for verification before you submit an appeal, and you need to do that. So sometimes it's video verification, sometimes it's not. We made a separate video about how to go through video verification. Watch that if you're seeing that as an option. Link in the description again. And if you aren't seeing video required, then it's probably going to be where Google is asking you to go through a couple things, submit some verification documents, maybe your photo ID, before they'll let you appeal. And so do that and just do it accurately, give truthful answers, provide the documentation they're looking for, and that will help. It doesn't automatically mean they'll then reinstate your account, but it's a required step along the way. And lastly, a lot of people ask, what happens if Google says you can't request any more reviews? So you only have a certain number of reviews that Google will allow of a suspended Merchant Center. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it does, that number does change a little bit. It's not always 3, although often 3. And you may reach a point where Google says you've requested your limit of reviews, there's nothing we can do. And it is super frustrating when that happens. Long story short, there are a couple of ways that we found around that. It's really nuanced. Sometimes the approach that we have to take is a little bit unique to each situation. So I'm not going to dig into all the specifics in this video just because there is a lot of nuance. But I wouldn't give up hope completely. There may be some ways that we can still figure out a way to get you a compliant running Google Merchant Center, even if you've hit that no more review notification. So a lot of information here. Hopefully this is helpful. Again, this is what we focus on here at Stub Group, or I should say one of the things we focus on. We have a whole team that focuses exclusively just on fixing Google Merchant Center and Google Ads account suspensions. So if you want to hire the experts, if you want help, if you don't want to invest all the time and frustration yourself into fixing this problem, please reach out through stubgroup.com, and at the very least, take advantage of the free resources we have, like that free website audit guide that can help you in the way of getting back online with Google.